Growing up with Vanessa as an older sister was like living in the constant shadow of a supernova. 2 years my senior, she possessed the kind of effortless charisma that made people orbit around her, while I, the quieter, more introspective Emma, was content to observe from the periphery. At least that's what everyone assumed. The truth was more complicated. My earliest memory of Vanessa stealing my spotlight was at my 6th birthday party. Mom had spent all morning decorating the backyard with purple balloons and streamers, purple being my favorite color that year. I'd invited my entire kindergarten class for an afternoon of cake and games. Just as I was about to blow out my candles, Vanessa burst into a perfectly choreographed dance routine in the middle of the patio. My friends quickly abandoned the circle around my cake to watch my sister twirl and leap. Even my parents shifted their attention, Dad rushing to grab the video camera that was supposed to capture my birthday wish. "She just wants to contribute to your special day," Mom explained later when she found me hiding in my bedroom closet. That's how sisters share special moments. But sharing wasn't what Vanessa did. She consumed moments whole, digested them and transformed them into showcases for herself. By high school I'd accepted my role in Vanessa's orbit. I excelled academically while she dominated socially. I made peace with this arrangement until my high school graduation. I'd been named valedictorian, an achievement that had required 4 years of rigorous study and sacrifice. The night before graduation, during our family dinner, Vanessa announced she'd been accepted to study abroad in Paris for the following semester. "I wasn't going to say anything until after Emma's graduation," she said, fake modest as she passed around the acceptance letter. "But I just got the confirmation today and I'm just so excited I could burst." My parents spent the entire dinner discussing Vanessa's plans for Paris, asking about her housing arrangements and classes. My father uncorked the expensive champagne he'd been saving for my graduation toast. My valedictorian speech, which I'd been nervously practicing for weeks, wasn't mentioned once. The pattern continued through college. During my university graduation dinner, Vanessa announced her promotion at the fashion magazine where she worked. When I landed my first major client as an interior designer, Vanessa showed up at the celebration with a surprise +1. A minor celebrity she'd recently started dating. Even my 28th birthday dinner became about Vanessa's breakup with her longtime boyfriend. Throughout it all my parents made excuses. "Your sister is just more expressive. She doesn't mean anything by it. You know how Vanessa is, she just gets excited and doesn't think." But she did think. I saw the calculation in her eyes whenever she sensed attention drifting away from her. I noticed how she monitored reactions, adjusted her volume, or added dramatic gestures depending on whether she was getting the desired response. Vanessa wasn't spontaneous, she was strategic. By the time I met Ryan, I'd learned to keep my personal joy protected from Vanessa's spotlight-seeking missiles. I mentioned him casually to my family only after we'd been dating for 3 months. I deflected Vanessa's probing questions about where things were headed. I cherished our relationship in private, away from my sister's measuring gaze. Ryan and I met at a design conference in Chicago. I was presenting a panel on sustainable materials for luxury spaces. He was attending as part of research for his architectural firm. He approached me after my presentation with thoughtful questions that evolved into drinks, then dinner, then a weekend exploring the city together before returning to our respective homes. Me to Boston, him to New York. For 6 months, we conducted a long-distance relationship of weekend visits and daily video calls before he transferred to his firm's Boston office. What I loved most about Ryan was his attentiveness. He noticed things. The way I twisted my hair when concentrating, how I arranged my pens by color, my preference for sitting at restaurant tables with a view of the entrance. He listened when I spoke, remembering details about my clients and projects. After a lifetime of being overlooked, being truly seen was intoxicating. The proposal came on our 2-year anniversary. We returned to the restaurant where we'd had our first official date in Boston. A cozy Italian place with exposed brick walls and hand-blown glass light fixtures that cast honeyed glows across white tablecloths. I'd suspected something was coming from Ryan's nervous energy all evening, but the moment still left me breathless. "Emma Calloway," he said, kneeling beside our table, a vintage emerald-cut diamond ring extended toward me, "you've redesigned my entire world. Would you let me be part of yours, permanently?" I said yes through happy tears and the restaurant erupted in applause. For once, I didn't scan the room for observers or worry about how the moment appeared to others. I was fully present, my joy unfiltered. That feeling lasted exactly 3 days. I'd wanted to tell my family in person, so we arranged Sunday dinner at my parents' house. Ryan and I arrived early to help with preparations, and I managed to keep my left hand occupied with cooking tasks to preserve the surprise. Vanessa arrived 20 minutes late, standard for her, in a cloud of expensive perfume and dramatic apologies about traffic. We waited until dessert. My father had just served his homemade tiramisu when Ryan squeezed my hand under the table. Taking a deep breath, I placed my left hand on the table, the emerald catching the dining room light. "We have some news," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Ryan and I are engaged." My mother gasped and immediately teared up. My father stood to embrace us both. "And Vanessa." Vanessa's face performed a remarkable series of expressions in the span of seconds. Surprise, assessment, calculation, and finally, a brilliant smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh my God," she shrieked, pushing back her chair so forcefully it nearly toppled over. She rushed around the table to examine the ring, grabbing my hand and pulling it toward her face. "It's unique. Emerald cut. Not the classic choice, but so you." The slight hesitation, the faint emphasis on unique rather than beautiful. These were classic Vanessa moves, small negging comments disguised as enthusiasm. "When's the date?" she demanded, still holding my hand captive. "Where's the venue? Have you thought about colors? You'll need help planning. The best vendors book up so quickly, and of course you've been so busy with work." Before I could answer, Vanessa was in full planning mode, talking over me, suggesting vendors who had worked on her friend's absolutely gorgeous wedding. She pulled out her phone to show photos of venues she deemed appropriate, dismissing my mention of the botanical garden Ryan and I had already discussed. "That's a nice starter idea," she said, patting my arm condescendingly, "but let me show you what Jessica did for her wedding last spring." Now that was a statement venue. By the end of dinner, what should have been my announcement had transformed into Vanessa's planning showcase. My parents, as usual, seemed oblivious to the shift, praising Vanessa's knowledge of the wedding industry and thanking her for taking charge to help her less experienced sister. In the car ride home, Ryan took my hand and squeezed it gently. "You okay?" he asked, eyes still on the road. "That got a little hijacked." I smiled weakly. "Welcome to the Vanessa show. Been running since 1990. We don't have to take her suggestions, you know. This is our wedding." I nodded, but a familiar knot of anxiety had already formed in my stomach. I knew my sister. This was just the opening act. Vanessa wouldn't be satisfied merely offering unwanted advice. She would insert herself into every aspect of my wedding planning. And if history was any indication, she wouldn't rest until she'd found a way to make my wedding day about her. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have predicted, was just how far she would go to steal my spotlight, or how thoroughly I would eventually make her regret it. I should have known better than to ask Vanessa to be my maid of honor. But there are certain familial obligations that seem unavoidable, and my mother made it abundantly clear that passing over my only sister would cause a rift that might never heal. "She's your sister, Emma," Mom insisted during one of our early planning calls. "Think of how hurt she'll be if you choose a friend instead." I didn't mention that I was more concerned about how hurt I would be after months of planning with Hurricane Vanessa. Instead, I dutifully asked her over brunch the following weekend, presenting her with a hand-calligraphed card and small gift box containing a rose gold bracelet engraved with "Maid of Honor" and the wedding date. Vanessa's reaction was everything I'd expected: dramatic gasps, performative tears, and immediate social media posts documenting her overwhelming emotion at being asked to stand beside my baby sister on her special day. The photos showed her tear-stained face in the foreground with me blurred in the background. The bracelet featured prominently in 3 separate close-up shots. By dessert, she had already created a maid of honor planning spreadsheet on her tablet and bombarded me with questions about the engagement party. "I was thinking we'd keep it intimate," I said cautiously. "Maybe just close family and friends at that new rooftop restaurant downtown." Vanessa's perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched. "Intimate? Emma, this is your engagement party. It sets the tone for the entire wedding season. We need to book the loft at Harbor Point. They have that infinity pool terrace with city views. Megan Kingsley had hers there last year and people are still talking about it." I knew the loft starting price for events. More than our entire engagement party budget. That's not really what we had in mind. Trust me, Vanessa interrupted, reaching across the table to pat my hand. You only get engaged once. Well, hopefully. She laughed at her own joke. Let me handle this. It's what maids of honor do. Somehow, by the end of brunch, Vanessa had taken over planning the engagement party entirely. When I expressed my concerns to Ryan later, he suggested we see it as a blessing in disguise. Look at it this way, he said. She can pour all her enthusiasm into the engagement party, and we'll handle the actual wedding ourselves. But Ryan didn't understand the Vanessa ecosystem. Give her 1 inch of control and she'd redraw the entire map. 2 months later, I stood in the middle of the loft's terrace, surrounded by at least 70 people, most of whom were Vanessa's friends and industry connections, watching my sister work the room in a floor-length white gown. Did your sister not get the memo about not wearing white to wedding events? Ryan's cousin Dana whispered, handing me a glass of champagne. Oh, she got it, I replied, taking a larger sip than intended. She just decided it didn't apply to her. Vanessa's toast that evening set the tone for the months that followed. Standing on a small platform she'd had installed specifically for speeches, she raised her glass and tapped it delicately with a silver spoon. When Emma told me she was engaged, she began, her voice carrying across the now silent terrace, I have to admit I was surprised. Not because she found someone wonderful, though Ryan is certainly a catch. She paused to wink at my fiancé, who shifted uncomfortably beside me. But because I always thought I'd be the first to walk down the aisle. A ripple of awkward laughter moved through the crowd. But that's my little sister for you, always full of surprises. From the moment she was born, Emma has been determined to find her own path. Sometimes that path has been unconventional. Another pause, another knowing glance that made me grip my champagne flute tighter. But I've always admired her independence, even when her choices weren't what the rest of us might have made. By the time she finished her 5-minute toast, which included anecdotes about my adorable childhood fear of speaking in public, a recounting of my experimental phase in college, and multiple references to how she'd always looked out for her baby sister, I had nearly drained my second glass of champagne and was contemplating a third. The engagement party was just the beginning. When wedding dress shopping came around, I deliberately scheduled an appointment when Vanessa had told me she would be in Chicago for work. The morning of my appointment at Lace and Grace Bridal, my mother and I were enjoying coffee in the private bridal suite when the consultant appeared with a concerned expression. I hope you don't mind, but your sister is here. She says there was a change in her travel plans and she wouldn't miss this for the world. Before I could respond, Vanessa burst into the room, shopping bags in hand. Surprise! My Chicago trip got pushed to next week. Isn't that the most amazing timing? For the next 2 hours, Vanessa managed to try on more dresses than I did. Each time I emerged from the dressing room in a potential gown, Vanessa would study it critically before suggesting the consultant bring something similar but more flattering for me to try, which she would then try on herself, just to show you how the silhouette should look. The mermaid style really needs height to work, she explained, twirling in a lace gown I'd selected. On you, maybe something less dramatic? Perhaps an A-line to balance your hips. When I finally found my dress, a vintage-inspired sheath with delicate beading and an illusion neckline, Vanessa examined it from every angle before declaring, it's nice. Simple. Very you. Then she turned to the consultant. Do you have this in blush? I think I might want to try it for my own wedding someday. I could pull off a colored dress, don't you think? Venue selection brought its own Vanessa-shaped challenges. Ryan and I had our hearts set on the Riverside Botanical Gardens, with its glass conservatory and flowering arbors. It was slightly above our budget, but we decided to cut costs in other areas to make it work. Vanessa, upon hearing our choice, immediately launched into a campaign to change our minds. The gardens? In May. She scrunched her nose as if I'd suggested getting married in a landfill. It'll be so green. And all those allergies. Dad will be sneezing through your entire ceremony. Plus, what if it rains? Have you thought about that? When her initial objections failed to sway us, she changed tactics. I just think for what they're charging, you could get so much more elsewhere. My client Jenna. You remember her, the one who works for that luxury hotel group. She says they're building a new rooftop venue downtown that would be perfect. Modern, elegant, and they're offering special rates for their first season of bookings. What she failed to mention was that the venue wouldn't be completed until a month before our wedding, offering no time for contingencies if construction ran behind, which according to Ryan's architect friends, it almost certainly would. The bridal shower, which traditionally should have been organized by Vanessa as maid of honor, somehow morphed into an event that showcased her party planning skills rather than celebrating my upcoming marriage. She selected a theme, Around the World with the Future Mrs. Mitchell, that required guests to bring gifts representing different countries the newlyweds might visit. This would have been thoughtful if Ryan and I had expressed any interest in international travel. In reality, we'd already told family we were planning a honeymoon road trip along the California coast, a dream we'd shared since early in our relationship. Vanessa's speech at the shower was a masterclass in backhanded compliments. "I always told Emma she'd find someone someday," she said, standing beside the elaborate display of macarons she'd special ordered. Even during those years when she buried herself in schoolwork instead of dating. "Sometimes the longest waits bring the best rewards, isn't that right, sis?" The bachelorette weekend was the final straw. I'd requested a relaxed getaway at a lakeside cabin. Just me, my 2 college roommates and a couple of work friends. Somehow, Vanessa not only invited herself but added 4 of her own friends to the guest list, to liven things up. The quiet weekend of board games, wine and reminiscing I'd envisioned transformed into a non-stop party with male strippers, bar hopping and Instagram photo shoots. By Sunday morning I was exhausted, hungover and on the verge of tears as I packed my bag. "You're not actually upset, are you?" Vanessa asked, lounging on her bed while scrolling through photos from the previous night. "This is what bachelorette weekends are supposed to be. You should be thanking me for saving you from what would have been the most boring pre-wedding celebration in history." I zipped my suitcase with more force than necessary. "I didn't need saving, Vanessa. I needed you to listen to what I wanted for once." She looked up from her phone, genuine confusion crossing her face. "But this was so much better than what you planned." That moment, standing in that overpriced cabin rental with my head pounding and my sister completely oblivious to my feelings, crystallized something I'd known since childhood but had never fully articulated. Vanessa wasn't capable of seeing me as a separate person with my own desires and preferences. In her mind, her way was objectively better, and any deviation was simply a failure of judgment on my part. "The wedding is in 3 weeks, I said quietly. "I need you to understand something. This is my day. Not yours. Mine and Ryan's. If you can't support that without making it about yourself, tell me now so I can find another maid of honor." For a brief moment, something that might have been hurt flickered across Vanessa's face before her usual confidence reasserted itself. "Don't be dramatic, Emma. Of course I support you. Everything I've done has been to make your wedding perfect." She stood and wrapped me in a perfumed hug. "Trust me, when the big day comes I'll make sure all eyes are on you." The irony of that promise wouldn't become clear until my wedding day arrived. And with it, Vanessa's most spectacular spotlight-stealing performance yet. May 14th dawned clear and perfect. Exactly the kind of spring day I'd envisioned when we booked the Riverside Botanical Gardens. Sunlight filtered through the glass panels of the conservatory where we'd be saying our vows, casting rainbow prisms across the polished stone floor. Outside, the gardens exploded with color. Pink cherry blossoms, purple wisteria, and thousands of tulips creating a natural tapestry that no decorator could have improved upon. I arrived at the venue's bridal suite at 9 in the morning, 6 hours before the ceremony. My 2 bridesmaids, Sarah and Jess, were already there arranging breakfast pastries and mimosa supplies. The hairstylist and makeup artist were setting up their stations by the windows overlooking the koi pond. Everything was proceeding according to the minute-by-minute schedule I'd created. Everything except Vanessa. "Has anyone heard from my sister?" I asked, checking my phone for the dozenth time. Vanessa was supposed to arrive at 8:30 to help organize the sweet and greet vendors. Sarah and Jess exchanged glances. "I texted her 20 minutes ago," Sarah said. "She said she was just leaving, and would be here super soon." I nodded, unsurprised but still disappointed. Let's get started without her. By 10 o'clock I was in the makeup chair when Vanessa finally burst into the suite, 3 shopping bags dangling from her arms and her phone pressed to her ear. I know, she was saying to whoever was on the call. "The florist completely screwed up the ribbon color for the boutonnieres. No, I specifically said blush, not pink. There's a difference. A huge difference." She dropped her bags on a nearby chair and held up a finger toward me in the universal, 1-minute gesture while continuing her conversation. 5 minutes later she finally ended the call with a dramatic sigh. "Vendors," she said, rolling her eyes. "If you want something done right." "You're an hour and a half late," I said quietly, trying to keep still as the makeup artist worked on my eyeshadow. "I know, and I'm sorry," Vanessa replied, not sounding sorry at all. "But I was literally saving your wedding. The florist mixed up the ribbon colors and then your cake delivery was scheduled for the wrong time slot, and I had to stop for emergency supplies." She gestured toward her shopping bags. "I got us all matching robes for photos, and some emergency double-sided tape in case your dress needs adjusting." Before I could point out that we already had matching robes, the ones I'd ordered months ago, and that the dress had been perfectly altered, Vanessa's phone rang again. She answered immediately, wandering to the other side of the suite while discussing what sounded like last-minute changes to the reception seating chart. Changes I hadn't approved or even heard about. The morning continued in this vein, with Vanessa alternating between being on her phone and offering unsolicited critiques of everyone's hair and makeup. When it was finally her turn in the styling chair, she spent 20 minutes showing the hairstylist photos of what she wanted. A complex updo that would take significantly longer than the simple waves we'd agreed upon for the bridesmaids. "I'm the maid of honor," she explained when I raised an eyebrow. "I should stand out a little from the other girls." By the time we needed to get dressed, we were running 30 minutes behind schedule. My mother arrived with lunch and I picked at a sandwich while Sarah steamed my veil one last time. Vanessa, meanwhile, disappeared into the bathroom with her bridesmaid dress and didn't emerge for nearly 45 minutes. When she finally came out, I nearly choked on my water. The sage green bridesmaid dresses I'd selected were simple A-line chiffon with modest V-necks. Somehow Vanessa's dress had been transformed. The neckline was now a deep plunge, the waist taken in dramatically, and the skirt slid up to mid-thigh. She'd added a crystal belt that caught the light with every movement. "Do you like it?" she asked, twirling. I had my tailor make a few adjustments. The original cut was doing nothing for my figure. Before I could respond, my mother intervened. "Vanessa, honey, don't you think that's a bit much for a garden wedding at noon?" Vanessa pouted. "It's still the dress Emma picked. I just made it better." I closed my eyes briefly, counting to 10 in my head. This was exactly what Ryan and I had talked about the night before during our final pre-wedding phone call. "Don't let anything ruin tomorrow," he'd said. "No matter what happens, remember that by the end of the day we'll be married. That's all that matters." I opened my eyes and forced a smile. "It's fine. We need to get me into my dress now. We're behind schedule." The ceremony itself was beautiful despite Vanessa's best efforts. As we lined up for the processional, she noticed my train had shifted slightly and rushed to adjust it, accidentally stepping on the delicate lace with her stiletto heel. A small tear appeared along the edge. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, loud enough for the entire bridal party and several guests in the front row to hear. "Does anyone have a safety pin? The dress is ripping." My father, waiting to walk me down the aisle, squeezed my hand as I felt tears threatening. "It's tiny, Emma," he whispered. "No one will notice." As the music began and the bridesmaids started their walks down the aisle, I spotted Vanessa pull out her phone just before her turn. She quickly snapped a selfie, then typed something before tucking the phone into her bouquet and proceeding down the aisle with an exaggerated sway to her hips. Later, I would discover she'd posted that selfie to Instagram with the caption, "Walking down the aisle for my baby sister. Hashtag maid of honor duties, hashtag stealing the show, hashtag wedding day." The most painful moment came during the vows. As Ryan began to recite the words we'd written together, I noticed Vanessa in my peripheral vision, phone in hand, thumbs typing rapidly. Her head was bowed as if in emotional response to the ceremony, but I knew better. He was texting. During my vows. Still, as we were pronounced husband and wife and turned to face our guests as a married couple, I felt a wave of relief. The worst was over, I thought. We'd made it through the ceremony, and now we could relax and enjoy the reception with our friends and family. I couldn't have been more wrong. The cocktail hour and start of the reception went smoothly. Ryan and I took photos in the rose garden while guests enjoyed hors d'oeuvres and champagne on the terrace. We made our grand entrance to cheers and applause, shared our first dance to the song that had been playing the night we met, and finally sat down to dinner feeling blissfully happy. Then it was time for speeches. My father went first, delivering a heartfelt toast about watching me grow up and welcoming Ryan to the family. Ryan's best man followed with a humorous but sweet recounting of Ryan's immediate infatuation after our first meeting. And then, with a tinkle of silver against crystal, Vanessa rose from her seat beside me, microphone in hand. For those who don't know me, I'm Vanessa, Emma's older sister and maid of honor. She flashed her pageant smile at the crowd. Emma and I have always been close. Well, as close as you can be with a 2-year age gap and completely different personalities. Polite laughter rippled through the reception hall. I've watched my little sister grow from a shy bookworm into the beautiful bride you see today. And I have to say, I never thought she'd find someone who appreciates her unique qualities the way Ryan does. It just goes to show that there really is someone for everyone. My cheeks burned as Vanessa continued, peppering her speech with stories that invariably positioned her as the glamorous, outgoing sister and me as the awkward sidekick. Ryan's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. And now, Vanessa said, her voice taking on a practiced quiver of emotion, I have something special to share. I wasn't going to do this today. I was going to wait until next week when we had our family dinner. But seeing Emma so happy has made me realize that joy should never be postponed. She reached into her clutch and pulled out what looked like a small photograph. Brandon and I, she gestured toward her boyfriend of 8 months seated at a nearby table, have been keeping a little secret. My stomach dropped as I realized what was coming. We're expecting, Vanessa announced, her voice breaking with theatrical emotion as she held up what I now recognized as an ultrasound image. I'm 12 weeks along, and we just couldn't wait any longer to share our happiness with everyone we love. The reception hall erupted in gasps and applause. Vanessa beamed, cradling her still flat stomach with one hand while dabbing at non-existent tears with the other. My father immediately stood up, rushing to embrace her while my mother covered her mouth in shock and joy. I'm going to be a grandmother, I heard her exclaim to the guests at our table. Within seconds, Vanessa was surrounded by well-wishers, the ultrasound picture being passed around from guest to guest. My father, overcome with emotion, grabbed a microphone and spontaneously proposed a toast to my first grandchild. I sat frozen, watching as my wedding reception transformed into Vanessa's pregnancy announcement party. Ryan's parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly recognizing the inappropriateness of the moment but unsure how to react. My college friends at table 6 shot me sympathetic looks. The photographer, sensing drama, began capturing Vanessa's moment instead of following the shot list we'd carefully crafted. "Are you okay?" Ryan whispered, his arms sliding around my shoulders. I nodded mechanically, but inside I felt hollow. This was the culmination of every childhood birthday party, every graduation ceremony, every achievement that had been overshadowed by Vanessa's need to be the center of attention. But this time she hadn't just stolen my moment. She'd calculated the maximum impact, choosing the most important day of my life to ensure all eyes turned to her. "I need some air," I murmured, standing abruptly. I made my way through clusters of guests, many of whom were still discussing Vanessa's news, barely noticing the bride slipping past them. I pushed through the French doors leading to the garden terrace and gulped in the cool evening air, tears finally spilling down my carefully made-up cheeks. A few minutes later the doors opened again and Ryan appeared, 2 champagne flutes in hand. "Thought you might need this," he said, offering me a glass. I took it gratefully, noting with a sad smile that my husband had been reduced to fetching drinks at his own wedding reception. "She's unbelievable," I said, wiping away tears. "Who does this? Who announces a pregnancy at someone's wedding?" Ryan sighed, leaning against the stone balustrade beside me. "Someone desperate for attention, that's who." We stood in silence for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds of celebration continuing without us. "You know what the worst part is?" I said finally. "I'm actually happy for her. I'll be an aunt and that's wonderful. But she couldn't let me have just one day. One single day where I wasn't eclipsed by Hurricane Vanessa. Do you want to go back in? We could start the dancing, get everyone refocused on the wedding." I shook my head. "Give me a few more minutes." The terrace door opened again and my mother stepped out, her expression a mixture of concern and exasperation. "Emma, honey, what are you doing out here? People are asking for you. It's almost time to cut the cake." "Did you know?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. About Vanessa's pregnancy. Did you know she was planning to announce it today? My mother had the grace to look uncomfortable. She mentioned being pregnant last week, but I had no idea she was going to announce it at the reception. You know your sister, she gets caught up in the moment. This wasn't spontaneous, Mom. He brought the ultrasound picture. She planned this. Well, my mother said, smoothing her already perfect hair, what's done is done. Let's not make a scene. This is your wedding day, you should be happy. I was happy, I replied. Until Vanessa decided my wedding reception was the perfect venue for her pregnancy announcement. My mother sighed. Emma, please. Your sister is emotional right now. Pregnancy hormones and all. Let's just go back inside, cut the cake and enjoy the rest of the evening. Don't let this little hiccup ruin your special day. Little hiccup. As if Vanessa's calculated scene stealing was equivalent to the DJ playing the wrong song or the caterer mixing up meal orders. It was the same dismissal I'd heard my entire life. Vanessa's feelings and actions always took precedence, while mine were minimized or ignored entirely. I looked at Ryan, who gave me an encouraging nod. With a deep breath, I smoothed my dress and wiped away the last traces of tears. You're right, Mom. Let's go cut the cake. We returned to the reception, where Vanessa was now showing her ultrasound picture to Ryan's elderly grandmother. The DJ announced it was time for the cake cutting, and guests gathered around the elaborate four-tier creation adorned with sugar flowers that matched my bouquet. As Ryan and I posed with the cake knife, I caught Vanessa's eye across the room. She smiled brilliantly, clearly pleased with herself, completely oblivious to, or unconcerned with, the pain she'd caused. In that moment something shifted inside me. The hurt crystallized into resolve. I smiled back at my sister, a genuine smile that surprised even me. Because in that moment I made a decision. This wouldn't be the end of the story. Someday somehow the tables would turn. And when that day came I would be ready. The weeks following our wedding passed in a blur of honeymoon adventures, thank you note writing and settling into married life with Ryan. Through it all, I maintained radio silence with Vanessa, ignoring her texts, declining her calls and muting her on social media, where she'd been posting a steady stream of bump updates, complete with professional photo shoots and weekly size comparisons to exotic fruits. Pineapple Week. Baby is the size of a pineapple. Read one particularly enthusiastic caption beneath a photo of Vanessa in a floral maxi dress, hands cradling her growing belly against a sunset backdrop. Ryan, scrolling through his phone one evening, snorted. Wasn't she just Mango Week 3 days ago? That's quite a growth spurt. I glanced over his shoulder at the image. She's always been creative with facts when it suits her narrative. My mother called every few days, each conversation eventually circling to the same topic. When was I going to get over what happened at the wedding and reconnect with my sister? She's been asking about you, Mom said during one Sunday call. She wants you to come to her gender reveal party next month. I have a work deadline that weekend, I replied automatically, though no such deadline existed. Emma, my mother sighed, she's your sister. And she's having a baby, your niece or nephew. You can't avoid her forever. I'm not avoiding her forever. Just until I no longer want to dump a glass of wine over her head when I see her. She made a mistake. People make mistakes. A mistake is forgetting to RSVP or using the wrong fork at dinner. What Vanessa did was deliberate and calculated. My mother's silence spoke volumes. Even she couldn't spin Vanessa's wedding announcement as an innocent faux pas. Well, she finally said, your father and I are going to the gender reveal. It would mean a lot to all of us if you came too. Ryan is welcome, of course. I promised to think about it, knowing full well I wouldn't attend. I wasn't ready to see Vanessa, and a gender reveal party, where she would be the uncontested center of attention, seemed like the worst possible setting for our first post-wedding encounter. Instead, I sent a gift basket with premium baby products and a neutral-colored cashmere blanket. The card read simply, "Congratulations, Emma and Ryan." No mention of aunt or uncle, no expressions of excitement. Just acknowledgement. Vanessa's response came 3 days later. A text message with multiple crying emojis and exclamation points. Got your gorgeous gift. Miss you so much. When can we see you? We need to talk wedding photos and baby stuff. I left it unread. 2 more months passed. Fall arrived, painting Boston in russet and gold. Ryan and I settled into the comfortable rhythms of married life, and the sting of Vanessa's wedding betrayal began to dull from acute pain to a persistent ache. I might have continued my sister avoidance strategy indefinitely if not for my father's birthday in October. We're having a small dinner at La Maison, my mother informed me. Just the 5 of us, you, Ryan, your father, myself, and Vanessa. Is Brandon coming? I asked, referring to Vanessa's boyfriend and father of her child. No, he's traveling for work. Please say you'll come, Emma. Your father misses you, and it would mean the world to him to have both his daughters there. The guilt trip worked as my mother knew it would. That Saturday evening, Ryan and I found ourselves seated at my father's favorite French restaurant, across from a 7 months pregnant Vanessa who acted as if nothing had happened between us. Emma, she squealed when we arrived, attempting to wrap me in a hug that her protruding belly made awkward. God, it's been forever. You look amazing. Married life clearly agrees with you. Her enthusiasm was so genuine, her amnesia regarding our estrangement so complete, that I found myself momentarily disarmed. This was Vanessa's greatest talent, the ability to bulldoze through conflict by simply pretending it didn't exist. Throughout the appetizer course she chattered about her pregnancy, the bizarre cravings, the back pain, the absolutely transcendent feeling of the baby kicking. By the time our entrees arrived, she'd shown us 63 ultrasound photos on her phone and recounted every detail of her gender reveal party. It was a girl, announced via pink smoke bombs detonated by remote control as Vanessa and Brandon stood on a decorated stage before 100 guests. I'm thinking Sophia Grace or Isabella Rose for names, she continued, barely pausing to take a bite of her salmon. Something classic but with a touch of uniqueness, you know? My father beamed throughout dinner, clearly thrilled to have his family reunited. My mother kept shooting me meaningful glances, silently pleading for continued peace. Ryan maintained polite interest, asking appropriate questions about nursery plans and due dates. And I performed convincingly as the supportive sister, smiling and nodding in all the right places while a small bitter part of me wondered if Vanessa even remembered what she'd done at my wedding. The answer came during dessert. So, Vanessa said, setting down her spoon beside her barely touched chocolate mousse, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. She reached across the table to touch my hand. I feel like there's been some weirdness between us since your wedding. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. Was she actually going to acknowledge it? I know you probably felt a little upstaged by my announcement, she continued, her tone suggesting she was being incredibly generous in this assessment. And looking back, maybe the timing wasn't ideal. But when you're pregnant, emotions just take over sometimes. I was so happy, and seeing you so happy made me want to share my happiness too. It was kind of beautiful, really, like the perfect circle of family joy. My jaw literally dropped. In Vanessa's revised history, her announcement wasn't a calculated attention grab but a spontaneous overflow of family joy. Anyway, she continued, oblivious to my shock, I wanted to clear the air because I have some news, and I don't want any lingering, whatever, to affect how you receive it. She took a dramatic breath, her hand moving to rest on her belly in what had become her signature pose. Brandon proposed last weekend. We're getting married. My parents erupted in excited congratulations. Ryan offered a polite congratulations, while squeezing my knee under the table, a silent gesture of support. We're thinking June, Vanessa continued. I know that's only 3 months after the baby comes, but I'll have the best motivation to get back in shape, right? And June weddings are so classic. A June wedding. 8 months from now. Almost exactly a year after my own wedding. That's wonderful, I managed to say. I know wedding planning while preparing for a baby is going to be insane, Vanessa said, which is why I need all the help I can get. Emma. She reached for my hand again. I want you to be my matron of honor. The table fell silent. My parents watched me with matching expressions of hopeful expectation. Ryan's hand tightened on my knee. That's, wow, I stammered. I'm honored, but with everything that happened. Which is exactly why this is perfect. Vanessa interrupted. It's like redemption. A second chance for us to get this sister wedding thing right. You were so amazing planning your wedding. I need your expertise. And as my matron of honor, you'll be the first person besides me and Brandon to hold little Sophia or Isabella when she arrives. She squeezed my hand, her eyes wide with what appeared to be genuine emotion. Please, let me make things right between us. In that moment, staring into my sister's pleading eyes, I had a choice to make. I could refuse, maintaining the distance that had protected me these past months. I could agree reluctantly, setting firm boundaries from the start. Or I could say yes enthusiastically, giving Vanessa exactly what she wanted while beginning to formulate a plan of my own. Of course I'll be your matron of honor, I heard myself say, surprising everyone at the table, Ryan most of all. What are sisters for? Vanessa's squeal of delight caught the attention of nearby diners. She launched into immediate wedding planning mode, discussing venues, dress styles, and themes while my mind raced ahead to possibilities I'd never before considered. Later that night, as Ryan and I prepared for bed, he studied my face curiously. That was unexpected, he said. Are you sure about this matron of honor thing? After everything she did. I met his gaze in the bathroom mirror as I removed my earrings. Actually, I think it might be exactly what our relationship needs. Ryan looked skeptical. Did you see how she completely rewrote history? She's not sorry, Emma. She doesn't even think she did anything wrong. I know. I turned to face him directly. But maybe this is an opportunity. An opportunity for what? I didn't answer immediately, letting the possibility I'd been considering since dinner take firmer shape in my mind. An opportunity for closure, I finally said. For both of us. Ryan didn't look convinced, but he didn't press further. As we climbed into bed, he simply kissed my forehead and whispered, "Whatever you decide, I'm on your side." I fell asleep that night with thoughts swirling through my mind. Thoughts of weddings and announcements, of spotlight-stealing moments and perfect timing. Vanessa wanted to make things right between us, and perhaps she would, though not in the way she imagined. For the first time since my own wedding day, I felt a sense of calm purpose. The tables would turn as I'd promised myself they would. And Vanessa had just handed me the perfect opportunity to make it happen. The universe has a peculiar sense of humor. 2 weeks after I agreed to be Vanessa's matron of honor, I found myself staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test in our bathroom. Ryan. My voice echoed against the tile walls. Can you come here? He appeared in the doorway seconds later, toothbrush in hand, concern etched across his features. Everything okay? Wordlessly I held up the test. His eyes widened, toothbrush forgotten. Are you pregnant? I confirmed, a strange mix of emotions churning within me. According to this, we're having a baby. Ryan's face transformed from shock to pure joy. The toothbrush clattered into the sink as he swept me into a careful embrace, as if I'd suddenly become fragile. A baby, he murmured against my hair. We're having a baby. His uncomplicated happiness steadied me, and I felt my own smile growing. We'd talked about starting a family, of course, but had planned to wait at least a year after the wedding. This unexpected acceleration of our timeline was surprising but not unwelcome. It wasn't until later that evening, as we lay in bed discussing doctor's appointments and nursery colors, that the full implication hit me. Wait, I said, sitting upright. If I'm about 6 weeks along now, that means I'll be due in July, Ryan supplied. No, I grabbed my phone and pulled up the calendar app, counting forward. I'll be 14 weeks pregnant at Vanessa's wedding in June. Ryan was silent for a moment. Then, oh is right. I flopped back against the pillows. Second trimester. Just showing enough to be obvious, but not so far along that I'd be uncomfortably huge in a bridesmaid dress. Perfect timing for a pregnancy announcement, Ryan said slowly, the realization dawning on him as it had on me. Perfect timing to steal her thunder, you mean? I turned to look at him directly. The same way she stole mine. The silence between us was heavy with possibility. Are you actually considering it? Ryan finally asked, his tone carefully neutral. Announcing our pregnancy at her wedding? The idea had bloomed in my mind the moment I calculated the timing, bringing with it a shameful thrill of vindication. An eye for an eye. A spotlight stolen for a spotlight stolen. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me thinks it would be perfect justice. She'd finally understand how it feels. And the other part? I sighed. The other part knows it's petty and would probably just perpetuate this toxic cycle between us. Ryan shifted closer, his arms sliding around my shoulders. For what it's worth, I think Vanessa deserves a taste of her own medicine. But I also don't want you to do something you might regret, or that might cause a permanent rift in your family. The rift is already there, I said quietly. It has been since we were kids. Vanessa just refuses to see it. We fell silent again, contemplating the complex web of sibling rivalry, family dynamics, and the potential consequences of revenge. We don't have to decide anything tonight, Ryan eventually said. We've got months to think about it. But that night, as Ryan slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake turning the possibilities over in my mind. Would announcing my pregnancy at Vanessa's wedding make me just as bad as her? Or would it finally create the balance that had been missing from our relationship since childhood? And importantly, would it actually feel good, or would I be left feeling hollow? The following weeks brought morning sickness, first doctor's appointments, and the surreal experience of seeing our tiny baby, barely more than a flickering heartbeat, on the ultrasound monitor. We decided to keep the news private until after the first trimester, telling only our closest friends who didn't overlap with my family's social circle. Meanwhile, Vanessa's baby girl arrived in early March. Isabella Rose, 7 pounds 8 ounces, with her mother's perfect nose and her father's long eyelashes. According to the birth announcement Vanessa texted to the entire family from her hospital bed, along with 47 photos documenting everything from her water breaking to the final push. My parents immediately flew out to Boston for a 2-week stay to help with the baby, reporting back daily on Isabella's eating habits, sleeping patterns, and apparently extraordinary development skills. The nurse said she's never seen a newborn so alert. My mother gushed during one of our calls. Vanessa says she's already holding her head up for seconds at a time, which is extremely advanced. I made appropriately impressed noises while rolling my eyes at Ryan across our kitchen counter. With Vanessa focused on her new role as a mother, her wedding planning temporarily took a back seat. But by mid-April, when Isabella was 6 weeks old, the Vanessa wedding machine roared back to life. I received daily texts and emails with links to venues, dress options, and elaborate Pinterest boards for everything from invitations to signature cocktails. What do you think about these for bridesmaids? Vanessa texted one morning, attaching images of form-fitting satin gowns with mermaid silhouettes. I studied the dresses, mentally calculating how my 20-week pregnant body would look poured into that unforgiving fabric. Maybe something with a bit more flow? I suggested. A-line might be more flattering for different body types. But these are so elegant, she countered. And everyone in my bridal party is slim. It'll be gorgeous. I bit back the urge to inform her that at least one member of her bridal party would be decidedly not slim by June. Instead I typed, just thinking about comfort for a summer wedding. Those look pretty constrictive. 3 days and 37 dress options later, Vanessa finally settled on empire waist chiffon gowns in a pale blush color. Ironically, the most pregnancy-friendly option of the bunch. I couldn't decide if the universe was encouraging my revenge or testing my resolve. By my 12-week appointment in early May, Ryan and I still hadn't made a final decision about the pregnancy announcement. My small bump was just beginning to show, easy to hide under loose clothing but unmistakable when I wore anything fitted. We told my boss and immediate team at work, but had sworn them to secrecy, ostensibly to honor the traditional first trimester privacy, but actually to preserve our options for the big reveal. Everything looks perfect, my obstetrician announced, moving the ultrasound wand across my gel-covered abdomen. Strong heartbeat, good size, all measurements on track. Ryan squeezed my hand as we watched our baby wiggle on the screen, its tiny limbs now clearly visible. The doctor pointed out features, spine, face, hands, before asking if we wanted to know the sex. You can tell already? Asked surprised. With pretty good certainty, she confirmed. Want to know? Ryan and I exchanged glances, having previously decided to wait. But something about this moment, perhaps the growing reality of our child or the looming decision about Vanessa's wedding, made me nod. Yes, I said. We want to know. Congratulations, she said with a smile. You're having twins. Both boys. The shock rendered us momentarily speechless. Twins. 2 babies. Double everything. Double joy, double challenge, double the ammunition for my potential wedding announcement. That evening, as we absorbed the news over takeout pasta in our living room, I finally brought up the subject we'd been dancing around. I want to do it, I said. I want to announce the pregnancy at Vanessa's wedding. Ryan set down his fork. You're sure? I'm sure. But I hesitated. I want to do it right. Not in a way that seems deliberately cruel, but in a way that gives her a perfect mirror of what she did to me. What are you thinking? She announced during her maid of honor speech, right? So I'll announce during my matron of honor speech. I'll even use some of the same phrases she used, make it clear to her, if to no one else, that this is intentional. Ryan considered this. Do you think she'll recognize the parallel? Vanessa is self-absorbed, not stupid. She'll get it. And more importantly, she'll finally understand how it feels. And if she causes a scene? I smiled thinly. Then she'll be the one who looks bad at her own wedding. Win-win. We spent the rest of the evening refining the plan. The announcement would come near the end of my speech, after I'd delivered all the expected sentiments about love and happiness. I'd frame it as being overwhelmed by emotion at seeing my sister so happy, which made me want to share our own joy. I'd have the ultrasound images ready on my phone to show guests. I wouldn't apologize afterward, but neither would I gloat. I would simply act as if sharing such news at a wedding was the most natural thing in the world, exactly as Vanessa had done. There's one more thing, I said as we cleared away our dinner plates. I want to book a private ultrasound appointment before the wedding. Why? We already have pictures from today. I want better ones, I explained. High-resolution 3D images that will look amazing when people crowd around to see them. And I hesitated, a slightly petty idea forming. I want to know exactly what to say. Boy/girl twins would just be twins. But 2 boys means I get to specify identical twin boys. That phrase has impact. Ryan laughed, shaking his head. You've really thought this through. Blame it on the pregnancy hormones, I said, only half joking. They're making me extra thorough. As May rolled into June and Vanessa's wedding approached, my pregnancy became increasingly difficult to hide. At nearly 14 weeks with twins, my bump was obvious in anything but the most oversized clothing. Fortunately, most of the pre-wedding events were held virtually due to the geographical dispersion of the bridal party, allowing me to carefully control what was visible on camera. For the in-person bridal shower 2 weeks before the wedding, I selected a flowing black maxi dress with strategic ruching and carried a large clutch purse that I casually held against my midsection in photos. If anyone noticed my slightly fuller figure, they didn't comment, possibly assuming I'd simply put on a few married life pounds. 3 days before the wedding, I had my special ultrasound appointment. The images were everything I'd hoped for, crystal clear 3D renderings of our boys' faces, their tiny hands, their perfect profiles. The technician even captured a moment when one twin appeared to be reaching toward the other, creating an image so heartwarming it would melt even the most cynical observer. These are incredible, Ryan said as we looked through them that evening. Are you still sure about this plan? The question caught me off guard. Why, aren't you? I am if you are, he said carefully. I just want to make sure this is really what you want, not something you'll regret. I considered his words, searching my feelings honestly. The truth was, a small part of me did question whether this was the right choice. Vanessa's behavior had been selfish and hurtful, yes, but responding in kind wouldn't undo that hurt. It might even create new wounds that would take years to heal if they ever did. And yet, another part of me, perhaps the part that had spent a lifetime being overshadowed and dismissed, yearned for the balance this act would create. Just once, I wanted Vanessa to understand how it felt to have her special moment hijacked, to experience the sting of having attention redirected during what should be her time to shine. I'm sure, I finally said. Not because I want to hurt her, but because I want her to understand. Sometimes empathy only comes through experience. Ryan nodded slowly. Okay then. We're doing this. The night before the wedding, as I packed my matron of honor emergency kit and steamed my blush chiffon dress, I received a text from Vanessa. Can't believe tomorrow's finally here. So glad you're my matron of honor. No one else I'd want standing next to me. Love you, sis. Red heart, red heart, red heart. I stared at the message, an unexpected lump forming in my throat. Was I making a terrible mistake? Was I about to destroy whatever fragile reconciliation we'd built these past months? Then I remembered my own wedding day. The tears in the garden terrace, Ryan fetching champagne at our own reception, my mother telling me not to make a scene, when Vanessa had orchestrated the ultimate scene herself. I remembered years of birthdays, graduations, and achievements overshadowed because Vanessa couldn't bear to have attention focused elsewhere, even for a day. My thumbs moved across my phone screen. Wouldn't miss it for the world. See you tomorrow. Red heart. As I set my phone aside and continued packing, I felt strangely calm. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring. Justice, regret, catharsis, or some complex mixture of all three. But one thing was certain. After tomorrow, the dynamic between Vanessa and me would be forever changed. Whether that change would heal or deepen the rift between us remained to be seen. I placed the ultrasound images in a sealed envelope inside my clutch purse, then laid out everything for the morning. My matron of honor dress. My carefully written speech, including the pregnancy announcement that would either be the perfect comeuppance or the biggest mistake of my life. The special champagne flute I'd ordered that read "World's Best Matron of Honor." A prop for the toast that would become part of family legend one way or another. Tomorrow the tables would turn. Tomorrow Vanessa would finally understand what it felt like to be me. The morning of Vanessa's wedding dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect June day that wedding planners dream about. I woke before my alarm, my stomach a knot of anticipation, partly from the twins making their presence known, and partly from the knowledge of what I planned to do later that day. Ryan was already up, sitting at the edge of the bed with 2 cups of ginger tea. "Thought you might need this," he said, handing me a steaming mug. "Big day." I nodded, taking a careful sip. "Thanks. How are you feeling?" The question carried multiple layers and we both knew it. Physically, a little queasy, but that's normal. I placed a hand on my small but unmistakable bump. Emotionally, I'm ready. Ryan studied me for a long moment. "You know you don't have to go through with it if you change your mind. There's no shame in deciding to take the high road." "I know." I met his gaze steadily. "But after a lifetime of Vanessa's spotlight stealing, I think this is the only way she'll ever understand what she did to me." We finished our tea in contemplative silence before I headed to the shower. As warm water cascaded over me, I mentally rehearsed my speech once more. I'd memorized the key phrases from Vanessa's wedding announcement at my reception, planning to echo them precisely enough that she would recognize her own words coming back to haunt her. By 9 o'clock I was in the hotel's bridal suite with Vanessa and the other bridesmaids. The room buzzed with activity. Makeup artists working their magic, hairstylists wielding curling irons, the wedding planner checking her clipboard every 30 seconds and barking instructions into her headset. Vanessa sat in a chair by the window, a mimosa in one hand and her phone in the other, scrolling through social media as the hairstylist arranged her dark waves into an elaborate updo. "Oh good, you're here," she said when she spotted me. "Mom's watching Isabella, but she just texted that she's being fussy. Can you go check on them? They're in room 412. I bit back a retort about how I was here to be her matron of honor, not an errand girl, but nodded instead. "Sure, I'll head over after I drop off my things." Our mother had Isabella in her arms when I knocked, the 3-month-old red-faced and squirming. "Thank goodness," Mom sighed when she saw me. "She won't take her bottle and I need to finish getting ready. Can you try?" I carefully took my niece, suppressing a chuckle at the irony. Here I was, secretly pregnant with twins, being handed the baby whose birth announcement had overshadowed my engagement. Isabella's cries subsided as I settled into a rocking chair, speaking soothingly while offering the bottle again. "There we go," I murmured as she finally began to eat. "You were just waiting for your Aunt Emma, weren't you?" As Isabella drank, her tiny fingers curling around my index finger, an unexpected wave of emotion washed over me. She was innocent in all of this. This beautiful, perfect baby who had no idea about the complicated history between her mother and me. Would my actions today create ripples that would affect her too? Would I be setting in motion a feud that might someday extend to my own children? The thought gave me pause. But then I remembered all the moments I'd been hurt, all the times I'd stepped aside to let Vanessa have her moment in the sun without ever receiving the same courtesy in return. "Your mom needs to learn that other people matter too," I whispered to Isabella. "Even if it's a hard lesson." By the time I returned to the bridal suite, it was my turn in the makeup chair. The artist worked deftly, creating a look that complemented rather than competed with Vanessa's bridal makeup, subtle enough to ensure all eyes would be on the bride. If only Vanessa had shown me the same consideration at my wedding. As the morning progressed, I found myself watching my sister with new eyes. Despite her usual self-absorption, There was something touching about her excitement. She practically vibrated with happiness as she stepped into her dress, a stunning off-shoulder lace gown that made her look like she'd stepped out of a fairy tale. "What do you think?" she asked, twirling in front of the mirror. "You look beautiful," I said honestly. "Marcus won't know what hit him." For a brief moment, our eyes met in the mirror's reflection, and I saw something I rarely glimpsed in Vanessa: vulnerability. "I'm so glad you're here, Emma," she said softly. "I know we've had our moments, but having you as my matron of honor means everything to me." The sincerity in her voice made my throat tighten. I swallowed hard, guilt and determination warring within me. "I wouldn't miss it," I managed, busying myself with adjusting her veil to hide my conflicted expression. The ceremony itself was, I had to admit, lovely. Vanessa had chosen a historic garden with a stone pavilion overlooking the water, flowers cascading from every available surface. As we processed down the aisle, I was acutely aware of Ryan watching from his seat, his expression a mix of support and concern. Vanessa and Marcus exchanged personalized vows that actually brought tears to my eyes. Real ones, not the performative tears she'd shed at my wedding. For a moment, watching them seal their union with a kiss as guests applauded, I felt a flicker of doubt about my plan. But the moment quickly passed when, during post-ceremony photos, Vanessa spent 20 minutes arranging shots that deliberately excluded me or placed me at the far edge of the frame, despite my role as matron of honor. "Let's do one with just the bride and the bridesmaids with good figures," she said loudly to the photographer, shooting me an apologetic glance that did nothing to soften the sting. "Emma, you can sit this one out. The empire waist is lovely, but it's still making you look a bit puffy." My jaw clenched as several bridesmaids exchanged uncomfortable glances. If they only knew why I looked puffy. The encounter solidified my resolve. Vanessa hadn't changed. She was still the same selfish person who never considered others' feelings. The reception was held in a beautifully restored barn just steps from the garden. Fairy lights twinkled from the rafters, and long farm tables were set with blush linens and centerpieces of garden roses and peonies. At the head table, my place card sat to the left of Vanessa's, my speech notes burning a hole in my clutch purse beside it. Throughout dinner, I barely touched my food, my stomach churning with anticipation. Ryan caught my eye from his table across the room and raised his water glass slightly, our secret signal that he still supported whatever I decided. I gave him a small nod in return. As the main course was cleared, the best man rose for his speech. A series of good-natured jokes about Marcus's bachelor days followed by heartfelt wishes for the couple's happiness. Guests laughed and applauded at all the right moments, and then it was my turn. The DJ announced me and I rose on legs that felt surprisingly steady. As I took the microphone, I saw my mother bouncing Isabella on her lap, my father smiling encouragingly, and Vanessa, radiant in her bridal gown, looking up at me with what appeared to be genuine affection. "For those who don't know me, I'm Emma, Vanessa's sister and matron of honor," I began, my voice clear and strong. "Vanessa and I have shared a lifetime of memories, from childhood tea parties to teenage fashion disasters to becoming adults with lives and families of our own." I continued with the expected anecdotes about growing up together, drawing laughs with stories about Vanessa's determination and perfectionism, carefully framing these qualities in the most flattering light. I spoke about meeting Marcus for the first time and knowing he was perfect for my sister. I raised my glass to toast their love and future happiness, and then I reached the moment of decision. The folded ultrasound images seemed to pulse in my clutch like a secret heartbeat. One move, reaching for my purse instead of concluding my speech, would set everything in motion. There would be no taking it back. I looked at Vanessa, who was dabbing at her eyes, genuinely moved by my words so far. Then at Ryan, whose expression said he would support me either way. Then at my extended family, many of whom had been present at my wedding when Vanessa had stolen my moment. And suddenly, with crystal clarity, I knew what I needed to do. "Before I wrap up," I said, my heart pounding, "I want to share something personal." I saw Vanessa freeze, her champagne glass halfway to her lips. Being here today, witnessing such perfect love between my sister and her new husband, has made me reflect deeply on my own life and choices. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. She recognized the phrasing from her own announcement at my wedding. I saw the exact moment understanding dawned on her face. her complexion paling beneath her makeup as she realized what might be coming. Standing here as matron of honor has been a profound reminder of what's truly important in life, I continued, holding her gaze. Family, love, forgiveness, understanding. I paused, letting the tension build. Vanessa was barely breathing now, her knuckles white around her champagne flute as she waited for the announcement she clearly thought was coming. And in that spirit, I said slowly, I want to raise this special toast. To my sister Vanessa and her husband Marcus, may your marriage be blessed with patience, with kindness, and with the wisdom to know that true happiness comes not from seeking the spotlight, but from shining it on those you love when it's their turn to be celebrated. I raised my glass higher. To Vanessa and Marcus. To Vanessa and Marcus, the guests echoed, unaware of the private conversation happening between my sister and me through locked gazes. As I returned to my seat, Vanessa grabbed my hand under the table, her fingers trembling. You knew, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise. You knew what I thought you were going to do. Yes, I said simply. Just like I knew what you were going to do at my wedding. The difference is I chose not to do it. Her eyes filled with tears, real ones this time. Emma, we'll talk later, I said, squeezing her hand once before releasing it. Today is your day. The rest of the reception passed in a blur of dancing, cake cutting, and champagne toasts, sparkling cider discreetly provided for me by a knowing bartender who had caught me resting a hand on my belly earlier. As the night wound down, Ryan and I were preparing to leave when Vanessa appeared at my elbow, having changed into a simpler white dress for the send-off. Can we talk? She asked. Just for a minute? Ryan caught my eye and I nodded to assure him I was okay. He stepped away to give us privacy. Your speech, Vanessa began, twisting her new wedding ring nervously. The way you phrased certain parts. You were going to announce something, weren't you? I held her gaze steadily. What makes you think that? Because it's what I would have done. Her voice was small, lacking its usual confidence. It's what I did to you. Rather than confirm or deny, I asked, how would you have felt if I had made an announcement today? Vanessa looked away, guilt flashing across her features. Horrible. Upstaged. Hurt. She met my eyes again. The way you must have felt at your wedding. The admission, the first acknowledgement she'd ever made of how her actions had affected me, was so unexpected that I felt my eyes sting with tears. Yes, I said simply. That's exactly how I felt. I'm sorry, Emma, she whispered. I was so caught up in my own excitement I never stopped to think about what it would do to you. And if I'm being honest, maybe part of me was jealous. You were having this perfect wedding and for once all the attention was on you instead of me. The confession hung between us. 30 years of rivalry and insecurity distilled into a single moment of truth. I am pregnant, you know, I said finally. With twin boys. Her eyes widened. Really? How far along? 14 weeks today. Understanding dawned on her face. So you really could have announced it. It would have been perfect timing to do exactly what I did to you. Yes. But you didn't. No, I agreed. I didn't. Why not? She asked, genuine confusion in her voice. I would have deserved it. I considered her question carefully. Because breaking a cycle is harder than perpetuating it. And because someday I want my sons and your daughter to have a better relationship than we've had. Tears spilled down Vanessa's cheeks. I don't deserve a sister like you. Probably not, I said with a small smile. But you're stuck with me anyway. She laughed through her tears, then hesitated before asking, can I hug you? Or would that squish the babies? They can handle it, I assured her, opening my arms. As we embraced, something shifted between us. Not a magical healing of all past hurts, but perhaps the first step toward a more honest relationship. One where we could acknowledge our flaws and insecurities instead of expressing them through competition and one-upmanship. Later that night, as Ryan and I prepared for bed in our hotel room, he asked the question I'd been expecting, any regrets? I thought about the ultrasound images still tucked away in my purse and used. About the momentary satisfaction I'd sacrificed for the possibility of a healthier future. About the expression on Vanessa's face when she realized what I'd chosen not to do. No, I said truthfully. No regrets. I'm proud of you, Ryan said, his hand coming to rest gently on my growing belly. Both for what you did and didn't do today. As I drifted toward sleep that night, I thought about the long road ahead. Not just the arrival of our twins in a few months, but the ongoing journey of rebuilding my relationship with Vanessa. It wouldn't be perfect. Old habits and hurts wouldn't disappear overnight. But perhaps in choosing compassion over revenge, I'd opened the door to something better than the satisfaction of getting even. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Vanessa. Just realized I never actually congratulated you properly. I'm so happy for you and Ryan. Those boys are going to have the best mom in the world. I love you, sis. And I really am sorry. I smiled as I typed my reply. Thanks, V. Their aunt isn't so bad either. Get some sleep, you're a married woman now. As I set my phone aside, I felt the flutter of movement in my belly. Too early for real kicks, but a reminder nonetheless of the new lives growing within me. Lives that would be born into a family where, hopefully, the cycle of rivalry had begun to heal. The revenge I'd planned for so long had transformed into something I hadn't expected. Forgiveness. Not because Vanessa deserved it, but because I deserved peace. And in the end, that was the sweetest revenge of all.